Hi guys. So my new book, the sequel to Barnaby Brown and the Time Machine, is called Barnaby Brown and the Baetylus Stones, and it just came out last Monday. Uh, and to help you give a little bit of an understanding of the kind of story, I'm going to read you a little bit of the prologue. So it's set kind of way back in time, just to give a little bit of an intro to some of the stuff that's going to be happening, so that when it does happen, it makes sense. And will be bits in this if you've read book one that will make sense, and it won't make sense if you haven't read book one. So please read book one first. Okay, so I'm just going to go straight in with this. This is the prologue to Barnaby Brown and the Baetylus Stones. You will be my queen, rose Hyarbus, the local Mauritani chief. I'd rather burn, screams a venomous Queen Elisa of Tyre, known to her subjects and loyal followers as Dido. Her name simply means beloved. Her life has been in turmoil for the past few years, having fled her home city of Tyre, the largest port in the kingdom of Phoenicia. This was instigated after the murder of her husband Acharbus by her brother, the recently ascended King Pygmalion. Descendant of Jezebel, you are a whore and you will belong to me, he spits as he grabs her by the hair and strikes her hard across the face. She falls into the dirt, her face red and streaked with tears. She has been at this particular site in North Africa for about 1 year and has royally annoyed Hyarbus. Having consistently refused his advances, she also used her consignment of gold to buy off other tribal chiefs in the area. She even tricked one king into giving up a substantial swathe of land, where she subsequently began work on the construction of a temple that overlooks her now busy trading port. The Phoenicians are gifted mariners, God, I can't speak today, and their influences have spread across the entire Mediterranean region. Wherever they go, they use their reputation and wealth to distribute their trade further, generally bringing prosperity to the areas in which they operate. This is perhaps the reason why her brother has not given chase and forced her to return after all these years. Dido was a strong leader and generally admired for her headstrong approach to trade and her oratory skills with the more dominant male tribal chiefs. Often, a little flirtation has gone a long way to improve these relations. However, with Hyarbus she has met her match. He stands above her, glistening dark skin against the night sky, his torch illuminating his enraged face on one side, the moon on the other. Being a romantic, he has opted not to take her here and now. I give you one more sunrise to comply. If you do not accept my request, I shall start with your handmaidens. What shall you start? She sobs angrily, wiping her eyes dry with the back of her hand. The gods require blood. I will offer them on this very spot, he growls menacingly. Turning swiftly, he throws a section of his ox-hide tunic over his shoulder and storms off towards the temporary camp which is located near the shore. Dido slowly lifts herself from the ground and brushes herself down. She is in her mid-20s and stunningly beautiful. Her long flowing dark hair is gathered on top of her head and held in place by a golden clasp resembling an eagle. Her white tunic is stained with the soil of the ground around her. It is slightly torn at the sleeve, where Hyarbus grabbed and dragged her from the camp to the temple site. Sitting hunched down on a foundation wall, she raises her head to the sky. Why do you torture me? She shouts angrily to the gods. You should have ended me with my love. As the moonlight sparkles in her tears, the sounds of the crackling fires from the camp below and the waves pounding the shore attempt to drown out her cries. With her head still facing the stars, one particularly bright one catches her eye. As she continues to stare, it grows brighter, causing her to frown a little. Her watery eyes must be playing tricks on her. However, the light still seems to grow. Is this an omen? She whispers to herself as she watches it become more intense in the starfield. Suddenly, it seems to pluck itself from the night sky and thunder over her head with an almighty crackle and hiss. It slams into the ground some 30 meters away from her, throwing up a wide cloud of dirt and rocks that rain back down over the next 5 seconds. A startled Dido finds herself back on the ground. Cautiously, she gets to her feet and begins to creep her way towards the now smouldering area, where small glowing embers rise into the sky and hover like fireflies. This helps to lead her directly to a 20-meter wide impact crater. The pit is some 3 feet deep in the middle, where a basketball-sized lump of black rock lies. Thin streams of smoke pour from tiny fissures around its surface. Dido turns her head once more to the skies. "What have you said me?" she inquires of her gods. Reaching her hand out towards the object, she quickly pulls away as an intense pulse of steam threatens to scorch her hand. She must be very cautious. Turning back towards the building site, she remembers seeing a stone urn full of water that the workers used to quench their thirst. She quickly rushes back and grabs an amphora, which she dips in and allows to fill to its brim. Carrying the vessel back to the crater, she once more approaches the smouldering rock. She knows the effects that steam can have, having seen many forgers work on splendid bronzeware. Her experiences have taught her to keep a good distance as she prepares to gingerly toss the contents of the jug onto the hot stone. She reaches back and throws the contents out in one long arc. The water instantly hisses as it hits its target, and there's a loud crack as the rapidly cooling outer shell splits open. Not taking any chances, she runs back to the urn and refills the container before returning to the hole to pour the water directly into the gap she has created. She lets the liquid flow slowly this time, ensuring that the temperature is dropping by gauging how much steam is produced. By the time the amphora is empty, the steam is gone, and she assumes that whatever sits within is potentially cool enough to touch. Not taking any risks, she wraps her hands in folds of her lower tunic and pulls the stone apart. Although she has only the moonlight to guide her, she can just make out a clump of dark stone inside. She reaches in and scoops it out. What an odd gift this is from the gods. Cradling it in her dress, she carries it to the urn, where she gently lowers it in and proceeds to ensure it is cool and clean. After a minute of rolling the baseball-sized object around in the material and water, she lifts it out and places it gently on one of the white stone foundation walls. In the moonlight, she can just make out a slightly bluish hue to it. It also seems to be transparent. She is mesmerized by the way the moonlight refracts, dances, and sparkles deep within its structure. What a beautiful gift! As she lifts the crystal up to view it better against the light, she instantly has a warm, tingling sensation that seems to raise her spirits. Within her, something she has not felt in a long time rises to the surface. Joy. She closes her eyes to focus on the feeling and stands swaying, facing out to sea, allowing a cool breeze to gently fan her body. Her thoughts drift. Before she can understand what is happening, it's as if her eyes have opened, and it's broad daylight. Looking at her surroundings, she's astonished to see the completed temple of Bursa behind her. Next to it stands a funeral pyre, encircled by a crowd of wailing women. What is this? Now she seems to lift into the air, her tunic being whipped by the wind, her sandaled feet dangling down unsupported. Am I to be an oracle? She gasps, enthralled by the vision being presented before her. This is normally exclusive to seers and others with the gift of foresight. She slowly drifts back over the pyre and realizes that there is a body lying on top of it. As she is lowered down, it becomes apparent that the corpse is hers. She is much older and is lying on her side, skewered through the gut by her own ceremonial sword. There are no executioners or priests present, which indicates that this is apparently self-inflicted. Suddenly, a distant trumpet sounds. She turns around and sees a large flotilla of ships pouring towards the mouth of the port. Below her, the camp is gone. It has been replaced by a sprawling city of white buildings with red-tiled roofs. Where the city meets the sea, there is a vast circular port with a central building that looks like a shipyard. "The stone must leave Carthage tonight," a voice from behind her cries. She spins around to find an old man carrying a young boy on his shoulders. They enter the temple and make their way to a large alabaster statue of a woman with cupped hands. Dido squints and realizes that it bears an uncanny likeness to herself. The boy on the old man's shoulders reaches up and removes an object, Dido's new crystal. The scene then blurs and whisks its way over water, land, and bloody battles. There are screams as the stone is ripped from people's hands. Almost everyone that comes into contact with it seems to meet a brutal end. Suddenly, it falls quiet, and she finds herself in a dimly lit room. Beside her, a young man kneels on the ground. It is decorated with mosaics depicting a man's head, surrounded by bathing women. The man holds Dido's crystal in his hands. As she moves closer to observe him, she can see he is trembling and chanting something over and over again. He may be possibly praying to the gods. The room around them shakes as the terrified man starts to whimper. Suddenly, the light falls and a wall of black dust blasts into the room, sealing its occupant in darkness. Silence. Then there is a gentle tapping sound. As it continues, light pours into her eyes, half blinding her. The room is gone, and she is surrounded by strange-looking men with beards and odd-looking hats. One man has 2 circles in front of his eyes containing glass. He reaches over and lifts her up in his cupped hands, and Dido realizes she is no longer a person, but appears to have aggregated with the rock itself. Then they are off again, blasting through time. She is now standing in a vast, open, grassy space. Before her, an enormous white monolith is apparently being plucked from the ground by the gods themselves. As it rises, it roars and seems to tear open the ground below to reveal a fiery world. It ascends until it mixes with the other stars in the sky. The next few minutes are filled with revelations of soldiers shooting fire, journeys through the heavens, and a strange purple world of the gods. What is all of this? Once more the light fades, and it all falls quiet. There is a dark circular room. In the centre is a well of light, shining up to the ceiling. By it lies the body of a man over which a woman cries. A second man lies nearby, also motionless and being tended by a female. She approaches the sobbing woman and notices she has purple hair. Perhaps she's a warrior from the purple god world. As Dido creeps closer, she realizes the man on the ground is dead, his eyes devoid of life. He is wearing a black outfit that seems to cling to him. Looking at the scene, she deduces there has been a battle between the 2 men, possibly over the hand of the woman who cries. "I'm sorry I could not have loved you more," the lady announces as she clutches onto the tunic of the dead man. Then she stands up and dries her tears. For a moment she stands motionless, staring at the body, before turning to face Dido and uttering something. The words seem to echo into the distance as the image blurs and drains from her thoughts. Soon there is only the darkness and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. She opens her eyes and looks down at the crystal in her hands. What did she mean? Just this one simple phrase. This is the end. And that's it. You will have to read the rest of the book to see what happens, and the 3 books that are going to follow it. Okay, have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.